20 million years of peaceful existence, 10 short years to be completely wiped out. An ancient creature that never harmed anyone was eradicated without a trace by our hands. Welcome to the most tragic story of the Yangtze River. Beneath the murky waters of Asia's longest river, a god once resided. Locals respectfully called them the Baiji, or the goddess of the Yangtze. This was a stunningly beautiful freshwater dolphin, possessing extraordinary intelligence. For millions of years, they swam freely, connecting through ultrasonic songs echoing underwater. Because they lived in extremely muddy environments, their eyes evolved to be nearly blind. In return, nature gifted them a flawless, highly advanced echolocation system. Sound was their vision, their language, and their absolute lifeline. But that incredible evolutionary gift officially became their most brutal death sentence. At the end of the 20th century, humanity decided to turn the sacred river into an industrial nightmare. Tens of thousands of massive cargo ships began churning the water every single day. The deafening roar of diesel engines violently tore through the ancient silence of the riverbed. For a creature that navigated entirely by hearing, this was sheer, barbaric torture. The industrial noise created a thick acoustic wall, completely blinding the Baiji's sonar system. They could no longer find food, communicate with their pods, or navigate the murky currents. The blinded, panicked dolphins swam aimlessly directly into the paths of high-speed vessels. Massive steel propellers sliced down into the water like mechanized guillotine blades. The soft, fragile bodies of the river goddesses were mercilessly shredded to pieces. Their blood mixed into the heavily polluted water, washing away without anyone even noticing. From a thriving population of thousands, the Baiji numbers plummeted into a freefall. The river that once echoed with dolphin songs now only held the screaming of tearing steel. The god of the Yangtze was being brutally murdered right inside its own home. The acoustic wall of noise was only the very first layer of this aquatic hell. The true threat that finished off these dolphins came directly from the local fishermen. When natural fish stocks depleted due to severe pollution, humans turned to destructive fishing methods. They laid out massive, sprawling lines of hooks, known as rolling hooks, deep across the riverbed. Thousands of razor-sharp iron hooks hung suspended in the murky water, waiting for victims. The Baiji dolphins, already blinded by the deafening ship noise, swam right into this lethal trap. The sharp hooks violently pierced deep into their soft, vulnerable skin. As the panicked animal thrashed to escape, dozens of other hooks tore its flesh apart. They became hopelessly pinned to the muddy bottom, writhing in agonizing, absolute despair. As mammals, dolphins must eventually surface to breathe oxygen. But the cruel, heavy fishing lines violently held them down in the dark, suffocating depths. These highly intelligent creatures were forced to endure a slow, agonizing death by drowning. If they somehow miraculously escaped the hooks, they faced another incredibly sinister invention. That invention was the widespread use of illegal electric fishing gear. Fishermen dropped high-voltage electrical currents directly into the river to instantly kill all aquatic life. When the lethal currents swept through the water, the Baiji were immediately electrocuted. Their complex nervous systems were completely paralyzed, causing horrifying, agonizing convulsions. Adult dolphins died instantly, floating lifelessly to the oily, polluted surface of the river. Weak, helpless calves watched their mothers violently spasm and sink, completely unable to save them. Entire families of Baiji were systematically wiped out, pod by tragic pod. Death did not come naturally. It was violently imposed by ruthless human greed. Humanity was draining the lifeblood of the river while completely ignoring the silent cries for help. The government issued strict bans, but weak enforcement turned the laws into a pathetic joke. Night after night, lethal electricity continued to violently rip through the Yangtze River. The Baiji population was backed into a corner, rapidly counting down the days to total extinction. Realizing that total annihilation was imminent, scientists frantically began efforts to save the Baiji. In 1980, fishermen accidentally captured a severely injured young male dolphin. This dolphin was named Chi-Chi, and he was quickly transported to a research facility in Wuhan. Chi-Chi tragically became the first and only Baiji to ever be successfully kept in captivity. His dedicated caretakers tried desperately to heal his terrible, infected wounds. But putting a wild god of the river into a concrete glass tank was a bitter, agonizing mistake. The tank was impossibly small compared to the vast, endless world he used to freely roam. The sonar clicks he emitted instantly bounced right back from the rigid, flat concrete walls. It was exactly like being locked inside a tiny room with 1,000 deafening acoustic mirrors. Desperate scientists organized massive, large-scale expeditions on the Yangtze to find him a mate. But the river had grown terrifyingly quiet, entirely devoid of any female dolphins. The few rare females they did manage to locate were already dead from nets or propellers. Chi-Chi was forced to live a life of profound, crushing isolation inside his tiny glass prison. He swam in endless, monotonous circles, day after agonizing day, year after year. The exceptional evolutionary intelligence of the Baiji had officially become a psychological prison. He possessed enough awareness to fully understand his captivity, but he could never escape it. Chi-Chi's desperate, echoing calls for a mate rang out endlessly through the artificial water. There was never a single reply, only the cold, sterile silence of the concrete tank. He lived in this exact state of profound sensory deprivation for 22 agonizing years. He became a living, breathing symbol of humanity's pathetic failure to protect the natural world. Chi-Chi was not an ambassador for his species. He was the river's very last prisoner. Audiences flocked to watch him through the thick glass, marveling at a doomed, dying species. But very few truly understood the absolute, crushing loneliness eating away at the animal's soul. In 2002, Chi-Chi took his final breath, taking the last hope of breeding with him. He died alone, marking the tragic beginning of the end for the goddess of the Yangtze. The tragic death of Chi-Chi rang out like a deafening, mournful death knell. However, some scientists still harbored a tiny, fragile shred of hope that survivors remained. In late 2006, the most extensive and expensive survey in history was organized. Dedicated researchers from 6 different nations gathered with the most advanced acoustic equipment available. They deployed 2 massive research vessels determined to scan every single inch of the Yangtze. For 6 grueling weeks, they traveled continuously over a distance of 2,000 miles. They dropped hypersensitive microphones deep into the water, praying to catch even the faintest signal. Everyone held their breath and listened, desperate to hear the signature whistle of the river goddess. But all that filtered into their headphones was a terrifying, violent symphony of destruction. The deafening roar of massive cargo ship engines drowned out everything else entirely. The harsh, metallic clanging of dredging machines violently slammed into the riverbed rocks. The screaming of industrial chainsaws echoed aggressively from the massive construction sites on shore. The river was no longer a living ecosystem. It had become a ruthless, dead industrial machine. Scientists strained their eyes through heavy binoculars from the crack of dawn until pitch-black night. They desperately searched for a single dorsal fin, a solitary breath breaking the murky surface. Day after agonizing day, their initial disappointment slowly morphed into sheer, absolute terror. The 6-week expedition concluded in a heavy, suffocating, and completely dead silence. Not a single solitary sonar click was recorded. Not a single ghostly dolphin shadow ever appeared. The official expedition logbook ended with a chilling, completely blank white page. Researchers stood silently on the deck, staring at the murky water with tears streaming down their faces. They realized they had just witnessed a profoundly tragic milestone in modern human history. A large, complex mammal species had been officially declared extinct in the wild. It wasn't caused by a meteor or an ice age, but entirely by the reckless hands of humanity. The 2006 survey exposed a harsh, undeniable, and deeply shameful truth. The ancient god of the Yangtze had been permanently buried beneath the toxic sludge of progress. Even though science has spoken, we must step back to feel the pain of the very last Beiji. We must imagine how that singular, utterly unique creature spent its final, agonizing days. Picture it swimming completely alone in the dark, blindingly polluted water of the dying river. It sent out desperate, frantic sonar clicks, trying relentlessly to find its family and its pod. Those sound waves traveled through the murky water, navigating past plastic waste and rusted shipwrecks. But instead of hearing a familiar, comforting whistle in return, it received only terrifying silence. It swam for dozens of miles, sending out signal after signal until it was physically exhausted. The sheer, crushing loneliness it experienced was vaster than any ocean on this planet. It was the sole remaining living creature of its entire kind, carrying the unbearable weight of extinction. There was no mate to breed with, no pod for protection, and absolutely no future to hope for. Every single cargo ship that passed overhead carried the lethal threat of shredding its body. It was forced to hide in constant, paralyzing fear, navigating through deadly walls of rolling hooks. In the pitch-black darkness of the river, it slowly realized that the absolute end was approaching. Perhaps it simply died of old age, taking its final breath in a state of supreme isolation. Or perhaps it violently succumbed to a deep, bleeding wound caused by a careless ship propeller. Whatever the ultimate cause, its death had no mourning funeral and no immediate press coverage. It took one final, struggling breath and then slowly sank into the dark, freezing mud of the Yangtze. Nobody knows the exact day the Beiji vanished, because we had stopped listening to them long ago. That solitary final survivor took an entire 20-million-year evolutionary branch deep into the grave. It was a silent, invisible passing, completely contrasting with the loud, oblivious human world above. They were inherently robbed of their right to exist merely to accommodate our economic convenience. The soul of that final individual is now nothing more than a phantom haunting the riverbed. It represents a permanent, toxic stain on the history of human civilization that can never be washed away. The silence of the Yangtze today serves as a life sentence for our collective apathy. A permanent, gaping void has been ripped into the ecosystem that absolutely nothing can ever fill. The tragedy of the Yangtze River dolphin is much more than the loss of a single animal species. It serves as a damning, ironclad indictment exposing the bottomless, ruthless greed of humanity. We constantly pride ourselves on our modern civilization, our towering skyscrapers, and our massive ships. Yet we are perfectly willing to trample the lives of the innocent creatures sharing this planet. The story of the Beiji proves that blind, unchecked industrial development always comes with a devastating price. A magnificent creature that survived for tens of millions of years was eradicated in a few short decades. The most terrifying part is that we watched the collapse happen daily and did nothing to stop it. We willingly traded an evolutionary marvel for lifeless concrete blocks and soulless economic growth numbers. The extinction of the Beiji is a blaring, urgent emergency alarm for all other threatened wildlife. If we can carelessly wipe out a literal god of the river, who exactly is going to be next? Will we simply continue to ravage the environment until we are surrounded by nothing but concrete and garbage? The Yangtze River still flows today, but its ancient, beautiful soul died a very long time ago. That murky water is now a massive, flowing graveyard serving as a monument to human arrogance. Every time you look at churning river water, remember the animals shredded by the steel propellers. Remember the desperate, unheard cries for help that were drowned out by roaring diesel engines. Extinction is a permanent, irreversible concept. There is no undo button and no second chance to fix it. Our pathetic failure to save the Beiji is a crime that history will judge harshly forever. Our ultimate responsibility now is to forcefully pass this tragic story down to future generations. We must remind them that the natural world is incredibly fragile against the brute force of humanity. We have to learn how to truly listen to the voices of creatures who cannot protect themselves. If we do not radically change how we treat nature, we will write our own extinction sentence. The white dolphin of the Yangtze has vanished forever into the cold, unforgiving void of eternity. Their beautiful songs have been permanently silenced, replaced only by the dead quiet of deep regret. Do not let their horrific stories sink into oblivion beneath the heavy, toxic mud of our indifference. Remember this blood-soaked lesson today, before another miraculous voice of nature is violently extinguished.